This is the Freeheel Life Podcast, episode number 73. I'm your host, Josh Madsen, coming at you from the Freeheel Life Shop in Salt Lake City, Utah. And welcome back, my friends, to another episode. And I really, I know I say this every week, but I can't wait to do this one because this one's super cool. And a little bit of history, a little bit of modern stuff, but it's all good. And I can't wait to get into it. But first, we're going to talk about some newsroom and notes. Some new stuff is up on the Freeheel Life Shop website. One of the things you can check out is the Cinco 5-panel Freeheel Life hat. Those are available and going quickly, but hop on that. We're also working through getting rid of the last of our inventory, as well as some of our demo items. So be sure to check all of that out on freeheellife.com. Our staff is very limited, so be patient. Me and Taylor were kind of working through some stuff this week, and most of the rest of the guys are off for the season and will return in the fall. But this is that time of year where we've got less people, but I know it's still kind of turned on, so we're rocking and rolling. So you can always reach us at customerservice@freeheellife.com, and we are doing our best to kind of keep up on all of that because we know that we are needed still and want to make sure to give you guys the best customer service that we can. So with that said, Salt Lake Brick and Mortar, along with the Midwest Service and Demo Center, are closed until the fall. But you can always keep an eye on the website, freeheellife.com. The shipping department's running. Alex has been doing an awesome job there. And like I said, Taylor and I have been rocking and rolling. And we've even had Wyatt in there mounting some skis this week. So available by appointment only. And the best way to do that is to email us and give us a couple days heads up so we can kind of set stuff up accordingly. And we would love to help you out. And we'll be doing that all summer, and happy to be of service. So my guest today grew up in Ohio. After high school, she moved west to the Rocky Mountains to teach skiing at Keystone in Colorado. It was there that she was introduced to telemark skiing. During her time in Summit County, Colorado, she witnessed classic events like the Breckenridge Bump Buffet, telemark racing, and the emergence of a new surge of telemark skiers pushing the limits of what was possible on freeheel gear. She began selling advertising for Couloir Magazine and eventually moved to Truckee, California to work at the Couloir offices. It was during this time that she pitched the idea of a telemark-specific ski magazine to then Couloir Publisher Craig Dostie. Despite his initial lackluster response, she pursued the idea and was able to bring to life Telemark Skier magazine as an additional title under Couloir's publishing in 2003. After her time at Telemark Skier magazine and Couloir, she moved on to work for Patagonia in their athlete and events department. But it was her love of the mountains that led her back to Tahoe to help run the Wild and Scenic Environmental Film Festival tour before venturing into starting and running the Tahoe Food Hub in 2012 that she continues to run today. Please welcome my guest, Susie Sutphin, along with Craig Dostie. All right, Susie, welcome to the Freeheel Life Podcast. How you doing?
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, I'm stoked. This is going to be a lot of fun. So Susie is joined by none other than the infamous Craig Dostie. And you guys obviously know each other. We're going to get into that. So hello, Craig.
Hello. Hey, it's great to catch up with you again, Susie. Always.
Here.
I'm stoked. This will be good because this is the first podcast Dostie's been on where he's not talking about gear. So this will be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Well,
maybe a little beacon talk.
Yeah, no, we'll do a little gear talk for sure. We'll get into that.
It's inevitable. We're talking telly, right?
Well, I saw the first NTN binding with you, so we got a little gear. history there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly what I want to get into, because I was like, before I don't want to get ahead of myself. So Susie, this is actually the first time we've talked. How
is that possible?
I don't know, because people from the podcast know I love history. I'm always digging through stuff. In fact, I have the first issue of Telemark Skier magazine in front of me.
Awesome.
So we'll dig into that here shortly. And I wanted to kind of get to know, just because this is the first time we've talked, is like to hear a little bit about, like, so you live in Lake Tahoe right now, but is that originally where you're from?
No, I've migrated west, Ohio to Colorado, and then thanks to Craig, Truckee.
Nice. So did you move to Truckee before you met Craig then?
No, I was living in Colorado and started working remotely, if that was a thing back in the 90s. I guess we were really ahead of our time. And then after like 2 years of proving myself, Craig then hired me full time to come out to Truckee in '99. So I've been here for 21 years.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So you're from Ohio though.
Yep. From Ohio. Didn't come from a skiing family. I think there's definitely in any skier, there's a DNA that whether it's from your family or just yourself, it definitely comes through. And just when I was 10 years old, I saw skiing for the first time, and I knew then that was definitely the path I was going to be on.
That's awesome. Are you like did you ever downhill ski in Ohio when you were back there?
Hell yeah.
Did you go to
Boston Mills, shout out.
Oh, Boston Mills.
Boston Mills, yep, in Akron, Ohio. I'd seen skiing on the 1980 Olympics. My dad had gone to watch it, so we recorded the entire thing. And that's probably when I saw, skiing for the first time, and was immediately like, I got to try this. And so my parents signed me up for lessons, and options were slim. Boston Mills has 250 vertical awesome feet, but you don't need much. And that was my home mountain for pretty much the next 7-8 years.
Oh, that's awesome. Did you say 1980? Was that Lake Placid Olympics?
Yeah, Lake Placid, exactly.
There you go.
Wow. So Susie, did you ever get up to Michigan and ski Mount Brighton?
No, I did have a couple of friends, families who skied. We did go to Michigan. I forget what the place was called. It was an interesting place. You actually skied down. That's so Midwest, right? Like you actually drove up to the top of the lift, and then you'd ski down into the ravine, and then you would actually ride the chair back up and get back in your car.
There's one in Iowa that's like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
that seems kind of far from you.
Where there's one like that in Michigan. I don't know if I've been to it. So was that like lower Michigan or up at the tip of the mitt sort of stuff?
Oh, I was like, 13. I have no idea.
You didn't pay attention to that. You were just in the car.
When I talk to my friends who live back there, we call it skiing the woods. It's not really the mountains. You're skiing the woods.
No, I make that. I distinguish east of the Mississippi from woods versus tree skiing because because that's what people say. They don't say, I'm going tree ski. I love skiing the trees. They're like, no, I ski the woods, and it's like hardwoods and bashing branches out of the way. And I'm starting to think the more I do these podcasts, I'm convinced that the ski industry would not exist if it wasn't for Midwesterners and East Coast people.
Yeah. 100%.
You guys are way more hardy. I grew up in Salt Lake, so it's like people are pretty snobby about snow out here. So
we don't care.
I probably skied more hours under lights at night, because that's how you do it in the Midwest. You ski a lot at night, and so probably before the age of 18, I probably had more hours skiing in the dark than I did in the daylight.
That's so funny. And so did you move kind of to Colorado like right after high school, or what brought you? Did you go to college?
Yeah, 1992, graduated. I had studied in Salzburg, so I had gotten to experience the big mountains there. Was by no means a big mountain skier when I was there, but realized mountain, life, mountain culture was where I wanted to take my next step. And so when I graduated college, I literally was in my Volkswagen the next day driving west and it's one of those things like, the sliding door of where your life would take you. I called Keystone, Colorado for a job at their ski school, and they hired me over the phone. So that's where I moved.
Wow.
I applied to like 6 other places. Who knows? I could have ended up in, how many other ski resorts, but that's just where it took me. And it's, kind of led from there.
Nice. So were you living up in Summit County, or were you just going up from Denver, or where?
No, yeah, I lived in Summit County. I was there for 7 years. And yeah, ski instructed for the first year or two, kind of got my quote unquote real job selling baseball caps, where, I'd get people to put their business logos on a baseball cap. And so I, thought I was really like, starting my career.
Starting your career in embroidery sales or.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. and you were doing that in Summit County back then?
Yeah. Just randomly, I think I was working the snack shack at some country club, and, some rich guy came by, and, he'd come through playing golf, and next thing you know, he offered me a job. And
oh my God.
That only lasted probably like a year. And then, ironically, now that I'm actually in the food industry, I managed a gourmet food store for 4 years. So it's, interesting how, things come back around. But yeah, that was only for a year. And then I managed this gourmet food store, and, but realized that wasn't going to be, my lifelong journey as well. So
that's amazing. So so I'm curious. So you're ski instructing. I mean, you're a good skier because you're teaching people. And then, this is a Telemark podcast, so it always comes up. When did you first see a Telemark skier? Was it in Summit County, or was this later on that kind of occurred?
Well, I definitely probably saw someone doing it in Ohio, but I don't think I realized what it was. I got pretty lucky when I moved to Colorado, landed in that perfect ski bum house. There was like 6 people, they all had, tons of friends, and we were kind of the central house. So everyone was congregating there. Most of them were telemark skiers because, definitely back then the predominant way to get into the backcountry was to telemark ski, and the Merrill Super Comp was just coming out. So a bunch of them had just gotten that. They just gotten their brand new Peeps, the yellow one that was from the early 90s. We had to have the headset for it. You had to put it.
Oh yeah, the earpiece.
Yeah, you had to have the earpiece, and just wanted you guys got to teach me how to to do this. And so my roommates were the ones who were first to take me out and give me all the tips, like genuflecting down the hill and squashing a bug under your big toe, and punching downhill with your uphill hand to bring your skis around. And I feel grateful that I learned on the equipment, I think, that I had at the time versus, I think people have it pretty easy these days, but, these were like super skinny, 203 centimeter long skis with, as Craig would call it, a mousetrap binding. And, the Merrill Super Comps that were used were like 2 sizes too big for me, but I was stoked, I was, taking up to Arapahoe Basin and just figuring it out.
Those white cuffs meant a lot back then,
Oh, I had red cuffs. I'm not sure what that means.
Oh,
you had the early ones.
You had the
okay. Well, they were definitely used. I don't.
That's actually that's a good history tidbit right there. Because see,
that's first gen.
The red cuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how I roll.
That's funny because actually a guy here, so we collect a lot of stuff here at the shop and have a bunch of boots on the wall. And that's funny because I didn't know that was the first gen. But it was a guy, Torrey Hauser from Summit County, that actually gave me the red cuffed Super Comps. Old racer guy from Summit. So
nice.
That's funny. No, that's cool. But that's a cool era because that's kind of when I got into it, was like 93, and I was
cool.
Yeah, so but I was.
Well, so you are you've been in Salt Lake this whole time?
Yeah, kind of. It was kind of weird. Like I I was born in Utah. I didn't really live here. We moved to Missouri. Then I moved around a lot, basically 4 states before I was 14. So it was like I lived in Denver, kind of all elementary school. And then same thing. I was a flatlander, dad's from Missouri, that kind of thing. But I had one ski day. And then we moved to Vail, and I had like a pass to Vail Beaver Creek through the school, learned how to ski. Telemark was not even, I didn't even know what that was. And we moved to Pennsylvania from Vail right after I learned how to ski. And then
you're like, what?
Yeah, I was like 12. So I'm like, I went from Vail where I'm wearing like hot pink t-shirts and bought a snowboard for the first year. And I was like, this is great. It's like 1989. And, but yeah, basically we moved to Salt Lake after PA, and that was when I kind of got into it. But I always loved the super comp because I have these memories of being like a 14-year-old kid and seeing, it was like all the mountain dudes and mountain girls back then, like the patrollers and the lifties. It just always seemed like the super comp represented this like kind of mythical mountain creature. I was like, what is that? Like those boots are pretty sweet. And,
I remember what I liked most about them was the hot pink Velcro, the straps.
Oh, the power strap on it.
Power over your forefoot.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's a crucial one. The little hot pink strap on the front.
Totally. And they doubled as a ski strap.
That's true. So Susie, so you got super comps. Do you remember? I always like to kind of date your gear. Do you remember your first pair of skis and bindings by chance?
Oh yeah, there were Rivas and the ski were Fisher GTS's 203s.
Ooh.
Yeah, they were like super long.
Yeah,
very skinny.
that was a really popular ski with tele ears back then, the GTS.
But it was really the Tua Monte that's what that's when I really felt like I arrived. When I got that, I think I got that in 94. Yeah. The T2 with the teal cuff, and then the Monte, Tua Montes with the cap. The cap top, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, cap construction.
And was that a Riva 1 or a Riva 2, you said?
The first one, probably a Riva 2 on my Tuas. They were black, which is amazing how a boot even could. I mean, it was like 2 little like clips that came over the top of your.
Oh yeah, it didn't have the toe bar yet.
Yeah, I don't even know how we stayed in those things.
Oh right, yeah, it was just the tabs, and then it had a heel lever, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, that was the Riva 2. That was the Riva 2.
Yeah.
So if you were in Salt Lake in the 90s, then the late 90s.
Yep. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, we moved here 92, 93.
Well, the Haddock Brothers. That's who was a big. I remember seeing them ski. Does that name sound familiar? The Haddock Brothers. There's 3 of them.
Oh yeah, Stephen Haddock. Is that right?
Maybe. I knew Jason, and then there was 2 others, and one of them came to the Breckenridge Telemark Bump Buffet.
Yeah.
And that was right after Costa Rigby. That was, I think it was probably 95. I did the first telemark, my first telemark one. Costa Rigby came up, and she had just won Crested Butte, against alpine skiers, and it was just like, oh my God, who is this person? And then the Haddock Brothers came out from Salt Lake. I mean, Breckenridge Telemark Bump Buffet was like the national championships of like telemark skiing at the time. And he came out, I think he did like a helicopter or a backflip, and it was just like, what? And that comp still sticks out in my mind, just seeing the caliber of skiers and being like, I am going to totally ski like this.
That's so cool. I'm so glad you brought that up because, yeah, Bump Buffet, yeah, I mean, that was like a mythical event. I mean, like even, and they try, actually, so you kind of probably came, if you were at the first comp, one of those first big mountain comps.
No, well, I wasn't at the first one. I mean, the Breckenridge Telemark Bump Buffet probably started in the 80s. So I came along much later. But my first one was probably in 1995.
Were you at the Berthoud Pass one or the A Basin one? Do you remember?
It was always Telemark Breckenridge Bump Buffet was always at Breckenridge.
Sorry, I thought
definitely the tour, the Tele tour that went around, and Jeff Wright, I think, was one of the main organizers for that. But this was just like the third Sunday of April every year, it was a specific hill at Breckenridge, and everyone dressed in costumes, and there was teams and the whole 9 yards. It was quite the scene.
Oh, for sure. I have some old pictures of Bump Buffet with guys in like jock straps doing spread eagles and stuff.
Yeah.
It was pretty wild. I never got to partake because I was a little, just like a tad after that time. But there's some funny pictures. But see, okay, yeah, no. So Bump Buffet. But were you ever? I'm curious now because you're kind of in that era of Nat Ross and Leslie Ross started putting on big mountain competitions at Berthoud and A Basin. Did you ever go to those?
Yes. No, I definitely went to those. I've forgotten they're the ones that Nat was one of the coordinators for that. But I mean, yeah, there just seemed like there was, I mean, in the winter, it seemed like there was a Telemark competition somewhere. And that was what I was doing for Craig. He was like, well, you can, I'll pay you for the first month's order of, a shop started carrying Couloir and they bought 12 copies. Well, I'd get that first month's order as my payment. And then, so I was just traveling all over the Front Range in the mountains, trying to get mountain shops to carry Couloir or go to a Telemark comp and hand out free magazines, in hopes of getting more subscribers. And, I just thought that was, the best.
That's amazing. That's so cool. Cause I've had Nat on the podcast and kind of reminisced about that era too. That's kind of cool to know you guys were handing Couloir magazines out back then.
Oh yeah.
That's rad. Yeah, Craig told me that he's like Susie. Well, Craig, tell the story because he was telling me about this.
you have to be careful here. Some of Craig's early memories of me sometimes don't always fit, but
yeah, we probably should have debriefed before the podcast on this.
There's always two sides to every coin, right? And so I know Susie's first encounter with me, it was from her perspective and my perspective was from mine. Okay. And, I know we met at, outdoor retailer at the Salt Palace, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, and we had a booth there with Couloir and, I happened to be in the booth at the time, and
it was Yosmark too. Yosmark. It was
that's right. We were sharing the booth with Mountain Nude with Claire Yost. And this was before we had the party. We had a party that night, and they really controlled the beer carefully there. Okay, and so if you wanted to share beer from your booth, you had to do it through the Salt Palace Union. Well, that made the keg cost like $500 because of the labor and the paperwork and all this stuff. And we're like,
that's Salt Lake in the 90s for sure.
Yeah. And Claire and I were like, we can't afford that, but we need to throw a party. We're throwing a party. So we got the kegs and somehow we snuck the kegs in.
Oh, wow.
And we had a party that night and beers would just magically appear behind this curtain. And if you knew what curtain to go to and you just kind of set your hand out there, a beer would appear in your hand.
Oh, my God. That's amazing.
And we went through 2 kegs for beer that we didn't have.
That's amazing.
Anyway, Susie came by earlier that day, and I forget who you were with, but it was her and another guy, and she was like, oh, man, you guys got to do a Telemark magazine. And I was like, no. And Susie was all prepared, and she had I think I've got this right. You had something written up, and you gave it to me, and fairly persuasive. But I remember later on talking to one of my staff at the time. I was like, they were like, "Do you remember that blonde who came in?" I go, "Oh yeah. I mean, she's crazy. She thinks that we should do a Telemark magazine." I said, there's just not enough people for that. But Susie continued to pursue. And
that's where I was convinced. Like I was looking for something like, okay, what am I going to do with my life? And because I was becoming such an addict for telemark skiing, and I saw these 2 girls start a snowboard magazine and called Fresh and Tasty, and I was like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And the original name was going to be called Pinhead, because that's kind of,
that's pretty cool.
Pins were still kind of a thing, but fading out. But we still called ourselves Pinheads for whatever reason. So that was the original name of what I was going to call it. And I'm sure I think I talked on the phone with Craig and a few other people, and Steve Hardesty. Is it Steve Hardesty from Tua?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think he was the one who really told it to me straight, because he was like, you seem like a nice person, but you know what? You're not going to have a Telemark magazine. I hate to tell you.
I like that you were going to call it Pinhead. That's amazing, because that's the era I remember. Like, you remember those old Pinheads from Hell stickers from Neptune back in the day?
Oh yeah, totally.
I told this story on a podcast once. As a high school kid, I drove from Salt Lake to Boulder to go to Neptune Mountaineering to get that sticker, because there was like no mail order, right? Like, I was like, I've got to have the Pinheads from Hell sticker. So,
oh my God.
So I actually appreciate that you wanted to call it that. That's pretty cool. So what happened? So like, you pitched this thing to Craig, and it sounds like maybe it was on deaf ears, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I quickly, with not, I didn't even know backcountry when I came up with this idea, to start a magazine. I didn't even, sadly didn't even know that there were two, Couloir and backcountry. And so it was like, well, could there be a Telemark ski magazine all by itself? And that was through the research of talking to, probably people like Craig and Steve Hardesty and, probably Russell Rainey. I mean, I think I was reaching out to all kinds of industry people, because at the same time, during one of the comps, I met Luke Miller. I don't know if these names sound familiar.
I love Luke. Luke's a good dude.
Oh, cool. Tell him I said hi. They kind of changed my life, because I met him and Caleb Malamed, and they were going to start a touring Telemark clinic program with Luke's Unimog that he was renovating. And we were going to travel around and give clinics, and but that unfortunately didn't pan out too well. The Unimog had all kinds of mechanicals, but we did pull together and it still exists today. We started a series at Arapahoe Basin, a Telemark clinic series, and it's by no means the same as what it was then. It's probably way more professional, but we pulled together a little dirtbag spring series at Arapahoe Basin, and but yeah, those guys, they were definitely ahead of their time, and definitely grateful. But they got me, they had sponsors, they got me all on board that. So I just started calling all of those tech companies, to kind of see what the interest was. Kind of taking the lead of what these girls had done. They'd sound like they just started calling gear companies to see who would advertise and support a magazine like this. So I definitely owe a lot to those guys, because they, it started introducing me to, different tech companies and different people in the industry, like Fisher and Scott and Smith and things like that. And they, can't say enough. They were definitely, sponsored Telemark skiers, in 1997. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's cool to hear. It's funny, because I had only kind of the cross section of like me, knowing Craig, and then like looking at the old magazines and kind of getting your name, but I didn't even realize your Colorado connection. That's awesome, because that really was like Summit County. I mean, it's always been kind of a hot spot in 80s, 90s, all that. But yeah, I agree. Guys like Luke Miller. I mean, Luke was like, when I came in the early 2000s and kind of started doing stuff, Luke was like the only punk rock kind of telly guy that I knew.
Nice.
And I was like, oh yeah, this guy is, that's the jam, so that's awesome. Well, so I guess what happened? Like, how do
we get past the impasse? So,
well, I'm pretty persistent.
I'm not picking up on that at all.
And so I think for probably, I don't know if it was a year, definitely a year, I did that just the kind of the guerrilla marketing, going to events, going to shops. It might have been, I need to look back at the time. Like, it could have been 2 years. I know I flew out, met Craig. We went out to Airport Road, I remember. And that's when you still had your rat tail. I remember that.
You had a rat tail?
Oh yeah. I think we could call it a mullet, but
yeah, no, nowadays we'd call it a mullet, but yeah.
Wow. Wow. All right.
And he was doing a demo. I don't know. I think Bill Stevenson was taking stills for it, and you were using rollerblades to do a demo.
Oh yes,
on how to perfect your telemark turn.
You were using rollerblades to make a telemark.
It was dry land training. Okay.
Yeah,
oh my God.
It was
I'm
legit.
so glad
it was bona fide.
We could end the conversation here, and I would like die in heaven happily. This is amazing. I wish there was. I want to find these photos of the rollerblade demo.
Oh, I got them.
You do?
Oh yeah.
Oh damn,
yeah.
dude. All right.
I actually intend to pull them out for what we got going.
Oh my God. Okay, sorry. Yeah. I didn't mean to die.
No, that's okay. Well, I'd be curious pulling out of the archives. So I call it the I'm Not Stupid test. Is a test that before anyone would get hired by Craig, you had to complete this test, and it was mostly keystrokes on a keyboard that you had to like short keystrokes, shortcuts. Yeah. And I had just taken a core class, so I had learned those. So fortunately, I passed, and and so that kind of got me to the next level.
That's amazing.
Again, I'm not sure. Flash forward, wham bam. I think then it was August of '99 that he finally said, okay, let's do this. And I mean, I think I pulled it all together within like 3 to 4 weeks. I sold my condo, I sold all my furniture, and broke up with my boyfriend, and got in my Volkswagen, and I drove west.
I love that you're driving. Are you taking like a VW Bug, or do you have a bus?
No,
rabbit. Wasn't it a rabbit or
not a Bug? No, it was a Golf.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
I was romanticizing that it was like some like old school Vanagon,
Yeah,
van
no. In my movie, it'll be that.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, but to back up a little bit on that, so my first impression was I thought Susie was a little delusional because she thought that we could do a Telemark magazine.
That gets you places, being delusional gets you places.
I agree with you.
Can't, well, let's put it this way. You made an impression, and I remember joking to some people back in the hotel that evening about, oh gosh, did you see that the blonde came by and thought we could do a Telemark magazine? I love how you keep calling me the blonde.
Well,
but that was my first impression. Okay.
I don't think you're allowed to say that anymore.
I know he's becoming like the super old guy that like you're kind of like cringing, but you're like, oh, I don't know, maybe it's from a different time.
But the reality. But then what happened in the interim? I think Susie sent me a resume, and because she was persistent. Right.
Yeah.
And I remember looking it over and going, wait a minute. Is this the gal who came by the booth? This does not read like a blonde. Okay. And
oh my God.
Oh geez.
Well, I'm going
to get so much shit for this podcast. I already can hear it.
But the reality is I realized my first impression was wrong. So I somehow, I called you, we talked, and then, I could tell Susie was totally passionate about this, and I was like, that is worth gold. Someone who's passionate about what I'm passionate about telemark, about backcountry skiing, about getting the word about growing things. And so I remember I was going on a trip out to Colorado, and so we met, and we talked about how to work together, and then so she ended up being our rep, okay? And as she said, she was driving around Colorado basically and trying to get backcountry shops, ski shops, outdoor shops to carry Couloir Magazine. And if they did, her commission was that first month's order. So if she can get them to carry 50 magazines, she walked away with $100 probably. And if she got them to carry 20,
I don't think it was quite that lucrative, but
yeah, well, probably because you didn't get them to carry 50 magazines because they were all kind of like, yeah. Honestly, that was reality. Yes, it was. But that started us working together. And then I realized, actually, she's kicking butt here. So she was the first person I ever flew out for an interview.
Wow.
Which for me, that was
that's big time in the outdoor business.
For me,
dude.
that was big time.
For sure. That must have been pretty impressive. So you're getting flown out for an interview. I mean, did you think you had it in the bag before you got out there? Or?
Well, he already kind of, I wouldn't say strung me along, but I was like, well, we'll see. I was hopeful, but I think it was still a year before he offered me the job. So
it was. I mean, it was like, okay, I knew you were the right person. The question is, can I pull this off?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was I'm trying to look at the date. I think it was, isn't it 2003 when you guys finally got this out? 2002?
Right, yeah.
2003?
2003. Yep, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so it sounds like it. So you get the job, you move out to Truckee, and then you start kind of like putting the pieces together. So were you contributing to Couloir at the same time, like kind of in the interim?
Yeah. I mean, I don't, what Craig's, I mean, I was sales and marketing, but we were a crew of 5 or 6 people, and, I enjoyed all aspects of it, and certain things needed to get done, like, plan the tele test, so I would do that, or, oh, hey, can I write the intro this month? I have an idea. And, obviously, as long as, Craig and our other editors approved, so it was fun to get involved, in all different aspects of it. But yeah, it was pretty much just like focused on Couloir for, those first, well, I guess it was it was 4 years.
4 years.
So that the first, those first 3+ years, it was just, Couloir. And then, really kind of had not, I don't even feel like I even thought about, because I was like, well, I'm here. The Telemark Skier magazine concept had kind of faded away. And it wasn't until, I guess that would have been, January 2003 in Vegas at SIA. And we had a Telemark booth, which was definitely, it definitely stuck out compared to the other booths. We didn't have all you can drink Red Bull, or, we looked very homegrown and rustic, some, kind of a hippie vibe at our booth, compared to, the Burtons and such that was, in the heyday of SIA trade show.
Well, that's, and just to kind of frame it for people that aren't aware of like what the outdoor industry was back then, you had outdoor retailer, which was more, that was in Salt Lake. It was kind of like snowshoes and hiking and backcountry and all this. And then like SIA, Snow Sports Industry of America show was in Vegas. And like, because I know what you're saying, but man, I mean, it was pretty wild. Like,
oh, totally wild.
I mean, I
was psyched when Craig wanted to go. I was like, yeah, let's do this.
That's pretty. That's pretty forward thinking. I mean, and I think it's funny because by the time I got in a little after this, I was like, I remember going to Vegas and seeing like snowboard section, and I was like, holy shit!
Yeah,
I'm like, this is.
Oh, they had their own section. I mean, and before that, there was a time when they were separate.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. They were separate, and they merged because snowboard had taken all the excitement away. And there were a couple of years, okay, where when you went to Vegas, there was nobody on the ski side. The aisles were practically empty, and the party was going on the snowboard side.
Oh, I remember one year I went, and it was like a Volcom booth or something, and it was like legit toga party at like 10 in the morning, and everybody was already drunk and like writing up orders, and I was like, whoa.
When they actually used to still write orders at the trade show.
Yeah, exactly. Like that. People were like, what are you talking about, writing orders at the trade show?
in true kind of dirtbag style of, a small independent publication, whenever we'd go to trade shows, we'd all be in one room. There was no separate hotel rooms. And in particular, going to Vegas, that one was just you and me, Craig, and then a few, like, a photographer who, contributed and such like that.
Yeah.
And we got there and you hadn't made a hotel room reservation.
Oh, geez.
But you did rent the Mustang. But he did rent the Mustang. So we had the Mustang.
You rented a Mustang?
I think so.
We needed a car to get around, right? We flew in, right?
Yes, maybe it was the last thing available at the airport.
Oh my God!
And we're driving around trying to find a hotel room, and I kept falling asleep in the back, and I'd wake up, and I think we had Bill Stevenson with us, and we're like, I wake up, and the city's getting further and further and further away.
Yeah.
And we ended up at some hour motel with a round bed and mirrored ceilings
and there's curtains all around it, and Susie opens the curtains and it's a mirror all around the bed.
Oh my God.
and
we had to share this room, so you could
so we had to share the room, we had to share. All right, you got that side, I got this side, okay, cool. And
we'll figure this out in the morning.
And we got in that position because something changed in between the previous year and that year, because I'd gone to Vegas for probably maybe 5 or 6 years. And whenever I'd gone, I just showed up and I found a hotel. It was not an issue. There was never a problem finding it.
Yeah, but there was a NASCAR event that year.
Right. That year, there was another convention going on for NASCAR. And so all the hotels were taken. And I'm sure Susie bugged me. So do we got? Oh no, it's Vegas. We'll find a room. It's not a problem.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And it was a problem.
That's an epic story. On top of just imagining you guys as like this homegrown op, like
we had a mural in our booth. We had this hand painted, 10-foot long mural of a snowscape. You
guys are a bunch of hippies back then.
Oh, it was
sure.
Great. It was great. But it was at that trade show. I'm sure because he was a Salt Lake guy, Jeff, right?
Oh yeah, Jeff was an old friend of mine from. Actually, funny enough, I didn't know Jeff from Telemark originally. I cleaned the bathrooms at our local rock gym called Rockreation, and as a high school kid. And Jeff was a climber there. And I got to know Jeff, and I went on a climbing trip with him when I was like 18. And it wasn't until I probably bumped into him again at the USTSA comps later on. So yeah. He was a great guy. That dude awesome. That guy did a lot for us.
Yeah, definitely. And rest in peace to Jeff.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so he was, organizing the tele events at the time, and ran into him the hallways or the aisles of the show. And that's when he mentioned something like, yeah, we need our own Telemark magazine, because we're just looking at all the stuff that's going on, snowboard and the glitz and the glam and alpine and all the stuff and free ride and that's when it just hit me. I was like, all of a sudden it all came flooding back to me, like, that's right, the Telemark magazine that I was going to start, like, we could start it. And that's when I remember running down the aisles and saying to Craig, and like, we got to start a Telemark ski magazine. And it was as simple as, well, sell the ads. And, it's kind of the rest is history.
That's amazing. No, and I'm grateful that you did that, because it's so funny as I've gotten to know Craig over the years. I always thought he was the one behind it. So I'm glad that.
Oh, thanks, Craig.
No, not because of him, right? Like, it's funny because I think, because of the association with Couloir, I think we just didn't know. That's why I was excited when we started. He and I started talking one day, and I'm like, Susie? I'm like, I want to, wait a second. And now as you're telling the story, I'm like, oh yeah, you're cut from the same cloth for sure. You're like yelling at the top of your lungs, like, we got to do this right now. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So it was great. I mean, it wouldn't. I mean, if he hadn't said yes, it wouldn't have happened. But hopefully, I had, proven enough that we could sell the ads, and we had a really, good team. Most were Telemark skiers. I think Grant was our only alpine skier.
He was. He was the only one who was exclusively alpine. Yeah.
And and so it was just like all of us had been there 2 or 3 years, and so, which is kind of unique in any small business to have employees who'd been there long enough. And I think it's in that moment when you feel like, okay, we've got a solid crew. We can do this. And I we launched the magazine and I was already headed off to work for Patagonia. So that's probably one of my regrets, was to not have stayed around longer. But it was really thanks to my time at working for Couloir that introduced me to the entire outdoor industry, that enabled me to get a job like that at Patagonia. But I wish I could have stayed around longer, Craig. It was one of those things where you couldn't pass up that opportunity, but it was such a great team with you and we had Darren and Matt and Tom.
No, we had a good crew. We had some good things going on. We had a lot of synergy, and we were influencing things. It was amazing. And just now, remind me, I think that same show that you and Jeff Wright kind of reminded you, hey, we need a Telemark magazine. And I remember he approached me earlier in the day, and I was just like, no way.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, funny.
Yeah. But when you approached me, it's like, okay, if Susie's got the idea, I can go for it. If Jeff wants me to do it, I'm not too. But I think wasn't that the show where Bones was there and he was pushing that we needed to market freeheel skiing, or was that a different year?
I don't remember.
I think that might have been a couple of years after this, because
no, it might have been a year before. Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I think
maybe because I feel like there was definitely talk about the name of the magazine, as to whether or not to call it Telemark Skier or Freeheel. And I think part of the thinking was, well, we already had Couloir and no one knew how to pronounce it, or let alone maybe knew what it was. And so we needed to be super clean, like backcountry. There's no doubt what that is. It was Backcountry Magazine, and so it was like, okay, let's just call it what it is. It's Telemark Skier. That's what we do, versus trying to be, fancy with it, I guess, but Freeheel, because Freeheel could be also,
backcountry.
It's backcountry.
Alpine touring. They had a freeheel to go uphill. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think it might've been the year before that I was in a meeting where Bones was there and he was pitching this freeheel concept. And so there was quite a few people there. Mike Hattrip with K2 Telemark was there. There was people from Fisher there. There was people from Rossi there. Adam Howard and company from Backcountry Magazine were there. And, of course, Mitch Weber and Big Tim were there. And and Bones was there pitching the whole concept of freeheel. And he was pitching it because he didn't want us to, at the time anyway, when SIA was doing demographic studies, they were mixing the definitions of backcountry skier and telemark skier. They were considered the same. And I think Bones saw that as a problem, but he also wanted to take advantage of it from a marketing standpoint. He didn't want to get pigeonholed as telemark skiers because he realized there was a bigger market of freeheel skiers. And so he was trying to make this pitch, and Mitch got livid because that was Telemark Tips. And so Telemark was the root part of the name, okay? Mm-hmm. And he was like, no way. It can't be Freeheel. And he started pounding on the table. It's got to be Telemark. And
we were past the bunch.
Yeah, and I happened to be sitting right next to him when he was pounding on the table and tripped over his drink, which ran over, and I think I was able to jump out of the way before it spilled on me. But the thing is, he caused such a scene, and that's when I realized, ooh, there's some momentum growing here with Telemark. And so when you approached me, probably the next year, I was like, yeah, if you'll sell the ads, let's do it. We can do it. With you on the team, we can do it.
I love it. That's and funny enough, I'm looking at the first issue. Telemark Skier is obviously the title. Right above it, Freeheel Magazine. So
we did do both. That's right.
I don't know if you remember that, but I'm looking at it. But
so that's where, we definitely were talking about both at the same time, and that's where we incorporated it. Right.
No, that's
the other thing I remember too is listening to the podcast. I don't know how long ago it was now, a few weeks ago, when you guys were talking about the relaunch, but how our initial cover shots were kind of the more just like, oh, great powder shot of someone teleskiing. And then I was like, right. Craig was like, no, we need something big. We need like someone doing something incredible on Telemark skis. And that was with Ben Dolan's and his Iron Cross, I think it was. So, but yeah. Cool.
No, and that's kind of what I wanted to dig into, because and just so you know, and I was telling Craig this because we were flipping through this before we hopped on with you, and it, you know, it's I think it's fun to hear the backstory to all this, because had you guys not put this magazine out, like, I 100% wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing. So
I love that.
No, it's really cool because like you guys actually, as a young telly guy, and I think, you know, and I think people say this a lot about magazines or movies, there's certain things that influence you, right? And I think that cover, for instance, like when we saw this come out, and we're all punk kids, right? We're like, we're getting rad. We want to get rad. We want magazines that look like what we're doing. And this was the first time we saw something where we were like, whoa, like there's a magazine and it's got Ben, you know, and that's where kind of like, this is 2003 when the first magazine comes out. And so I've just seen like Unparalleled 2, which is Josh Bones Murphy, who you guys were just talking about. So you got these movies with guys getting rad, like Luke Miller, Ben Dolan's, Max Mancini, all these guys.
Yeah, Max, that's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah, and then you get this magazine, and I'm sitting here like as a young early 20s guy going, no way, this is rad, and there's like a place for us. And it's, what's kind of cool to me is I'm looking at the, you know, kind of the contributors and the masthead, and I don't know if you know this, but that cover shot is this guy Chase Jarvis. Do you remember that name?
Oh yeah. Like, that was, but he was the skier, or he was the photographer.
He was the photographer, and
yeah,
he's
right.
like he's like
one of our main contributors.
Yeah, which is so crazy because I looked him up recently, and he's like some famous photographer now. It's crazy.
I love it.
Yeah, and I'm like looking at through the contributing photographers. You got Adam Clark, you got Chase Jarvis, Beth Lockhart. Let's see who else.
Lockhart. Oh my gosh,
Beth was a big part of the Unparalleled films, and then you had Will Wisman, who I ended up shooting with a lot later on. Really good guy, awesome photographer. Ace Cavale. He's right. Ace was from back at the. I'm skipping the name of the little village, but he's like Shapiro and all those guys.
Yeah, they were in Europe, and I'm going blank, and he was in Ophir, which is near Telluride for many years. I think he's finally moved, but he was there for like 20 years, easy.
Even Lee Cohen's in here.
Yeah, Lee Cohen, right?
That's a big, and I mean, in today, if you said that Lee Cohen shot Tele Skiers and was published in Telemark Skier magazine, people would be like, "What are you talking about?" He's a big he's a big Alta guy, but no, it's amazing, and so I'm curious. So like you're putting this first issue together, and that's kind of what I wanted to get to, is just like what was going through so you get the green light, you sell the ads, and like, I mean, what was it like putting this first issue together? You know, like. I'm just kind of curious, like what.
Well, I think the first issue. I mean, I feel like it came together relatively quickly because, at least my memory, it was kind of. It's almost like you're putting together the one and only magazine. If there was ever going to be just one issue, so it's like you wanted to kind of put it all in there. You know, you wanted, you know, the gear, you wanted the profile, you wanted the tips, the photos, and. I feel like it came together, Craig, I don't remember it, but I feel like it came together really smooth because it was the departments were obvious what we were going to do. You know, the first people we were going to include were kind of obvious because, you know, those were the names at the time. I would have think that it would probably, as it went on, would have become a little bit more challenging, always, you know, just to keep something fresh. But I just felt like it was a really fluid process.
Yeah, no, that first one was, and I think a big part of that, I mean, almost everyone on the Couloir staff was a Telemark skier, okay? And there was a whole bunch of things that everyone had pestered me about for, you know, the previous 2 years. Oh, we got to put this in. in Couloir. It's like, no, that's too telecentric. Oh,
right.
We gotta do this.
Exactly.
No, that's too telecentric. This is a backcountry magazine, and yes, Telemark is part of that. But we don't want to. No, we're not going to delve into the Telemark culture. We're not going to delve into the doing tricks in the half pipe. Because they're telemarkers. No, that has nothing to do with the backcountry. And so there was all this.
Which is why I think it was another reason why to start it, was because there was beginning to become so much content that we couldn't put in its own magazine.
Right. Yeah.
We couldn't put it in Couloir. It needed its own magazine.
Yep. It was a lot of pent up demand. So the first one, it was just like, oh yeah, there's all these things that we rejected that now we can do.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's crazy. I'm like sitting here flipping through it while you guys are talking, and I think what's amazing to me is, and Craig and I were actually talking about this earlier, is I think this magazine for me represents sort of a shift in like the history, because up until that point, it was like people always talked about Telemark as a backcountry thing, and then all of a sudden, and honestly, I'm so glad you guys did this print issue, because it actually captures this time where, like you're saying, there was like this whole different culture of people and gear and movies and things that were going on that were culturally, they were obviously riffing off this new free ride thing that was happening, terrain park and stuff like that. But you guys actually like captured that, and that's what's so cool about this cover. This is still to this day. Of all the print magazines that have ever been done for Telemark Skier, it's like this one, it's rad. I mean, he's like on G3 Targas and T races, and he's like doing this huge mute grab, and you guys captured the culture of what was going on. And I think even to this day, we struggle a little bit with that, because and I think that's why we're trying to relaunch this thing, because the culture still exists. It always exists, even though people think it's dead. It is alive and well.
No, I think you're right. I think that's why the timing for what you're doing is perfect, because it definitely took a beating with, lighter gear from Alpine touring coming on and people dropping off. But as the equipment's coming, well, I don't know if it's coming back, but the equipment's really good. The boots, the bindings, maybe it's not so much about having a Telemark ski, but there's definitely that community still out there. And just like we needed something in 2003 to bring us all together, I think that community needs something again to bring it all together, to like, you're not alone. There's this whole community out there of passionate Telemark skiers. So I think your timing is perfect.
No, that's cool to hear, and I appreciate you saying that. But yeah, it's cool, because even as I flip through this, I mean, some things are funny because I'm like, oh my God, we're still talking about the same shit. But
well, that's a skier, right? It's
like and that's why I always joke with Craig. I'm like, Craig, we're messengers from the past. We got to tell people this has happened before, But then there is so much stuff going on, and it's culturally important to have kind of a centerpiece, I think, and that's what's so rad when I go back and flip through. I mean, even the stuff I tell a lot of the young people, like they're like, oh, I'm gonna do this on tele skis, and I'm like, you guys need to go watch like these movies, or you need to look at this magazine. And they always flip it, I'll show them these old tele skier mags, and they flip it open, and they're like, holy shit, these guys were like getting after it, and this is like 20 years ago. And I'm like, and their gear wasn't even as good as what you're skiing on now. Like, it was really an amazing time for, people. I always said like that was the era of the hippie killers, like they were basically like trying to get everybody to realize that, oh, this isn't, even though we kind of get that stigma still, like when you guys came out with that cover, I felt like that was like, oh, okay, this is, it's not just about jumping and grabbing your skis. It is about powder turns and backcountry, but it's about all of it, doing it on Freeheel equipment, making a telemark turn when you go down. So yeah, that's cool. So what'd you feel like, Susie, like what was the reaction? Like, did you feel like it was positive? Like, were people into it, or was it kind of like, I don't know what's going on?
That is, I have to say, I can't remember. I think for myself, like it was just we did it. It's almost like, those kinds of projects, you almost have to do it as much for ourselves as a team as it is, and believe that, the positive reaction is going to be out there. And maybe, my memory is a little foggy because I literally was transitioning to Southern California to work for Patagonia. And probably the first issue came out when I was already departed from Couloir. So, it's kind of interesting. It's it all came together finally, and at the same time, I was then moving on, which is a little bittersweet in all of it. So that's where Craig would probably have a better memory for the response for it.
I think we captured it. I mean, I think we caught the moment, but what we didn't see, even though I predicted it and promoted it. So, I mean, what's most interesting for me is that I'm working with Josh, even though part of my goal with Couloir was to dethrone all the excitement surrounding Telemark Skier. Because I didn't see it as the most appropriate for most people in the backcountry.
Yeah, no,
which
for
was
sure.
the purpose of Couloir.
You're the reason Telemark Skier.
It's all Craig's fault.
Yeah.
I've been yelling at him for years. Don't worry. I've already chastised him enough.
And I mean, I admit that, okay? But I like to think that I helped be involved in bringing it back, because the thing that I was most adamant about, because I never gave up the Telemark turn in all of that. Even though I was promoting AT through Couloir, and then we did it through Telemark Skier magazine, personally, I stuck with the Telly. And the only thing that I wanted that we didn't have, that the AT skiers had, was a free pivot. And once we got that, I was like, okay, cool. I'm happy. All right.
Yeah.
In the meantime, the companies who were doing good with Telemark, Scarpa, Rodafella, Rosingall, Black Diamond, Garmont, who else? Crispy.
Gosh, Crispy, are they still around?
Still around.
Yeah, they are. And who else? Anyway, they formed a consortium to develop a new Telemark norm, because they realized that the duckbill form of Telemark, you couldn't come up with a reliable releasable binding. You couldn't come up with an easy step in. You couldn't do ski brakes easily, or there's no need for ski brakes, because if the binding isn't releasable, what do you need brakes for? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not going to.
Good
Anyway,
point.
all these things kind of, were in the mix, and that was going on in 2003. And so there was this move afoot to transform Telemark into what it's become now. And I think part of the reason we lost a lot, well, I think there's a number of reasons, and please chime in with your version, Susie, but my sense was a lot of people gave up on Telemark because we, through Couloir, had pushed backcountry so hard for so long. Everyone just kind of they went along with that, okay? And Telemark was no longer the most efficient for that. And then the other thing is, it's a hard turn to learn.
I think it was the weight. I think, Dynafit just shot out in front, and the boots got lighter, the bindings got lighter, which is a big part of it, is, having more lightweight gear so you can stay out longer, and probably some efficiencies, with, the turn and things like that. But I really think it was, if things like the Maiju and the
Lynx,
if those had come out earlier, I mean, I really think, but it's all gonna come back around, because it's like anything, people are gonna start to get bored or want to try something new, and I think it's gonna have a resurgence. So it's gonna have a renaissance. But maybe I'm just this hopeful romantic of a telly skier. It's gonna live.
Yeah, you're like all of us. That's good.
Yeah, but I mean, it's that's a great term. I mean, I think I'll always say I think I'm a better tele skier than an alpine skier. So perhaps that's what keeps me.
No, I love that. No, and you guys did capture it really well. And like you said, like, I mean, that must have been interesting. Like you kind of, the mag comes out and then, so you transitioned out of it, but stayed in the outdoor world after you left doing Telemark Skier stuff. What did you end up doing? I
think I still contributed probably here and there to the Telemark Skier and Couloir, because it was definitely still a part of me in so many ways. I'm sorry, what did you say? Where did I go?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious. Like, where did you go after that?
Well, and this is where I guess I'll use this opportunity. I mean, it's like when you think of the top 5 most influential people in your life. I mean, sorry, Craig, we're not sorry. Thank you. But sorry, the sense to kind of,
you're welcome.
Put the spotlight, but you are definitely in that top 5 most influential. Because if he hadn't taken that chance, on that blonde,
Oh, I knew that was going to come back to him at some point.
I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to meet the entire ski industry, outdoor industry, because I was selling ads. And so it was from those conversations with other, outdoor retailers that Patagonia offered me a job to run their athletes and events department. And so it was, I would never have gotten that job if it hadn't been for Couloir. And so I fully recognize that. And I think Craig did at the same time. When I had the opportunity and the offer, he was like, you have to go, you have to do this. And so it was definitely nice to have that blessing and to be able to, and it was, from there, I feel like I had that environmental awakening, going to Patagonia and working for, such an amazing company. And then that, led to one thing and then to another.
And are you back in Tahoe? So you went to Southern Cal for Patagonia, and then did you end up coming back to NorCal to? Yeah,
I was down there just like 3 years. When I took the job, I remember the HR director saying to me that, well, you're either a mountain person or you're an ocean person. And I was kind of like, uh-oh. But I'm like, well, I'm like, I can do the ocean, right? And it was definitely 3 of the best years of my life. The amount of places I got to travel and ski and the people I met. But the mountains were always calling. I mean, I bought a Toyota truck when I was down there, and I can't even imagine. I mean, I up and down the I-5 and 99 from Ventura to Tahoe so many times because, or Mammoth, but a lot back to Tahoe. And some of the relationships I had became stronger. That's how often I was back here. I feel like back in Tahoe was for, all those people. I didn't want to lose that connection. So yeah, it was only 3 years. And so then I was back in Tahoe, and that's when I started running the Wild and Scenic Environmental Film Festival's national tour. It was hosted by an environmental river group in Nevada City, the South Yuba River Citizens League. And that was in helps, Patagonia helped me make that transition. So it's kind of interesting. Like Craig helped me transition from Couloir to Patagonia, and Patagonia saw the potential for these films like me to inspire activism. And so Patagonia helped that transition and support this nonprofit river organization to help take these films around the country. And then, well, I guess I'll just finish the story. And then it was food films that, really struck a chord for me and what was broken in our food system. And that was in 2009. And 2 years later, I was still in Tahoe, but quit my job to do an independent study about our food system, and realizing where it was broken was in the middle, that we needed a better way to source and distribute food. And food hubs were starting to, pop up around the country. And with our close proximity here in Tahoe to year-round food, it seemed like the perfect location for a food hub. And so that was, by the time it actually launched in 2012, a Tahoe Food Hub. We're about to hit 10 years here.
Wow. So tell me a little bit, like what does Tahoe Food Hub do? Like, is this like a collective of, like, are you running this? Is this your thing?
Yeah. So and that's where it's just like, interesting. Like, I'll say like Telemark Skiing changed my life because, it started from that moment of wanting to start a magazine, to meeting Craig, to getting a job at Couloir, to going to pet, it's just like boom, 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 and all these things. And it's that one decision led me to becoming passionate about food, to then starting a nonprofit organization called the Tahoe Food Hub, which is building a local food system for North Lake Tahoe, by supporting farms, providing them a marketplace to increase access to that local food for our community here in North Lake Tahoe. So it's a network of 50 farms and ranches and a ton of specialty food producers. And we source from all of them and bring that food up to Tahoe and distribute it either to wholesale accounts, restaurants, grocery stores, schools, hospitals. But we also have an online farmers market. And at one point we did have a store that people could come into, but since the pandemic, we've moved everything online. And yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but it's been, there's definitely some silver linings from the pandemic, because people really woke up, to where their food came from. And it's been really great to see the response from our community in the support of our farmers and wanting to get more involved with where their food comes from.
Man, that's amazing. I love that. And are you guys based out of like up near Truckee, like North Lake stuff? Or
Yeah. So, and I'm still in the same house. I mean, I moved away for 3 years to work for Patagonia, but the first year after I moved to Tahoe to work for Craig, I was fortunate enough to probably get the last cheap house in Tahoe.
Definitely.
And I'm still in the same house. And here, based here in Truckee, we have a warehouse out at the Truckee airport. And a great group of people, staff and community supporting our local farms. Oh
man, that's so cool. I love hearing stuff like that. That's great. And I like that you're still plugging away. You're ambitious. I like it. That's awesome. You know what's funny too, just not to diverge too far off off that ending, but I was curious, did you ever see Bones, and I have not seen this. Bones put out Artificial, which was a Patagonia film, which I always thought was super crazy, because I've kind of followed his career after he stopped doing Telemark movies, and I was like, oh wow, this is crazy that he's doing like these other films.
Yeah, I know. He's like full on filmmaker. Well, we got to work after I left Couloir, and then I went to Patagonia, and then I was back in Tahoe, and we were running the film festival tour. Each venue across the country needed a DVD with all of their films put on there. So he was our guy for that, because he was, dabbling in all kinds of things, media. And being that he was here local, it was a great partnership. And so for those 4 years I was at the film festival, or 5 years, he built all of our tour DVDs. So, and, then we've obviously gone in some different directions, but it was cool to get to work with him in a different capacity as well.
That's amazing. Yeah, there's a lot of good, I love that you could share a little bit about kind of what you did after that, because I always find it so interesting. Just, you're not in Telemark, but the spirit of kind of how you help build the magazine in the early days obviously still permeates kind of how you're living your life now. And I love that. That's amazing. And even just to bump into some of those people, because I think about North Lake Tahoe and I think of all the cool people I've met through Telemark. And, there's like, I think you probably know Brendan at Alpenglow.
Yep.
Like when I used to make Telemark movies, and Brendan would go out of his way and he would help rent this little cafe down the street and let me show movies when he was the manager there. And a lot of good people in that world. So
do you put out movies too?
Yeah. So that was,
what was yours?
So yeah, that's kind of what's funny. And that's why I said like how influential, like you guys, if you hadn't had, put out this magazine, it like you said, it kind of changed my life too. 'Cause that first magazine came out, and, was right around the time I was up at Alta. I lived up there for, funny enough, here's a funny story. I had a 69 VW bus, so we both had a VW, right?
Oh, nice. Yours is cooler than mine. But.
Well, yours probably ran and mine didn't. So what?
I had a 63 Bug.
Yeah, see, we're all in the same. That's what I'm saying. Hippies, punks, and misfits, man. We're all in the same boat. But yeah, no. So I was, early 20s, and I was like, I'm moving to the beach, and I literally I was living in northern Utah, and I was like driving back to Salt Lake to load the bus up, and the bus broke. I ended up at Alta. Long story short, I dishwashed for a winter, and I had taught telemark up in northern Utah with this girl, Sarah Clemenson, who was in Bones' movies.
Yeah.
So Sarah calls me up and introduces me. She's like, hey, do you want to go? We had done a couple telemark races together. And she's like, hey, I'm shooting photos with this girl, Beth Lockhart. And Beth took me on my first photo shoot. And
awesome.
Handed me all these clothes. Like, I was like, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. She's like, here's some clothes and let's shoot some photos. And she's like, hey, if you want to do this, like, maybe I can get you a pair of skis to shoot on. I'm like, free skis? All right, cool. And so
right, exactly.
Right. You know how, the story, right? Like, so she's like, I can get you some skis. And I'm like, huh. All right. Well, I'm obviously not driving to the beach in my V-dub. So
right.
I shot the photos, and then I got a free pair of skis from this gentleman, Ted McGinnis, who was at Carhu.
Yep.
Really great guy. First guy sent me a pair of skis, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm sponsored. I've obviously made it. I've got a free pair of skis, So, anyways, from there, I was like, hey, maybe this could be fun. And I met a lot of the people that I had been looking at in the magazine, Max and Luke and Nat Ross and Bones and all these other people. And I made a couple clips in Nat Ross's movie one year, and then Powder Horse started. And I started as a Powder Horse.
That was you, Powder Horse.
Well, so I was in the first two Powder Horse movies.
Okay, I love those. Nice.
And then I was like, very similar to you, I was like, I can do this myself. Yeah, and so I went off and I started a little movie company called Lipstick Films that was a lot of like terrain park, and it was more like kind of freestyle stuff. And we toured. I always wanted to be a rock and roller, so I was like, I'm gonna book a 50 city tour.
Oh my god, I love it.
It was crazy. So we toured 50 cities in 90 days, and then
look at that, our parallel paths. I did a national tour for environmental films. So
yeah, no, so exactly, and so and that and I learned a lot, as you probably have in film touring, as venues can be expensive if you use theaters.
Yeah.
And so what I did, like, I skipped a year, and then I got hired at Telemark Skier magazine, because literally I was like at the end of this whole thing, and I said, I'm like, I can't make enough money doing this. I'm like, this isn't going to work. And I remember I got a job at a hotel working night audit, like graveyard shift. And somehow Howie, Adam Howard from, Howard had acquired Couloir Magazine, and I literally get this call out of the blue. I have no idea who he is. And he's like, hey dude, he's like, we just acquired Couloir Magazine. We're going to absorb Couloir into Backcountry, into the readership, but we're going to relaunch Telemark Skier. Like, he's like, you want to be the editor? And I'm like, dude, I don't know how to edit a magazine, but, yeah. And then I put out like four movies as the editor. So I was kind of like part filmmaker. We put 2 print magazines out and then did a demo tour. So very similar path kind of to the stuff you encountered.
Love that.
Yeah. And then
that's why it's crazy we've never met before.
I know, it is kind of crazy, because I would come, like I said, Brendan, and I'd always do Tahoe City, and then I did South Lake a couple times at the community college down there. I think I tried showing one at a bar one time. They were pretty loose, because by that point I was like realizing, like, I have enough people coming that if I take my own projector and my own screen and my own PA system, that I could put on movies pretty much anywhere. And so there was some kind of obscure showings, but yeah, so that was kind of my background. And
I love it.
Yeah, and here we are.
it's kind of the history of the telemark skiing in the past 20 years.
Yeah, for sure. No, and I think it's been pretty fun, and I love getting to know your story, and it's funny because I love digging into this history, and I'm like, man, there's so many cool people that have like done little things that have impacted like a couple of us that have gone on to do other things, and
yeah,
quite honestly, if you guys hadn't have done that, I don't think I'd be here. So I appreciate it. Well, that's awesome. Well, Susie, thanks for taking the time to.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is quite, I feel honored to get to share my story and talk to you guys. And thank you to you for, carrying things forward. And yeah, it's awesome.
No, and it means a lot to talk to you too. And I feel like, it's really cool to hear your story and that's kind of part of the podcast is like when we do these history ones, it's like, I want people to understand that there's been these people that had ambition and like had really cool ideas. And I'm glad you hassled Craig into making a magazine. That's awesome. So, well, cool. Well, we'll definitely, I would love to have you out to Salt Lake. We'll do some skiing. If nothing else, we'll come to 100%. the Tahoe land and get some turns there with you sometime.
Ooh, be careful.
Oh, it's good on both sides.
You might like it.
Yeah, I know. I might. You guys get too much snow at once out there. That's the problem.
That's what's so good about it.
I know. I just think the last time I drove to Tahoe, we had that great idea being Salt Lake kids, and we're like, it's going to dump like 3 feet. And we drove I-80 in the worst storm ever, got there, and it literally dumped like 6 feet. And we tried hiking in the backcountry, and we literally had to put reverse switchbacks from the top to the bottom so that we could crawl out because it was too deep. So we drove home.
Yeah.
So no, but it's beautiful out there.
It can get too deep sometimes.
Oh man, you guys get it. When you get it, you get it. So
yeah.
Well, cool, Susan. We'll I'd love to have you on again sometime, and I appreciate you telling your story and hanging out with us. So
yeah, thanks for wanting to hear my story. So have a great one, and we'll ski soon.
Sounds good. See you later.
See you, Susie.
Cool. Good night. Bye.
Bye. Oh, what a great time talking to those two, and just the combination of the historical perspective. I obviously adore that stuff. I love it so much. And, what's funny is when I bought Telemark Skier in 2012, the 2003 stuff, when they started it, I was pretty new to the whole, scene or whatever you want to call it in around 2002, 2003 was kind of when I was getting into it. So a lot of that history, I kind of missed it. I was really more of, kind of, like I was saying, kind of a fan, like I was like the one buying the magazine. And so it's really cool for me to talk to people like Susie and Craig and to have them both talking about it at the same time, really brought it to life for me and hopefully all of you out there as well. I think stories like that are really cool to see how people come up with ideas, why they think they're possible, and really going after things to make it happen. And I'm obviously a big believer in that, and I love hearing something so close to me have roots in that real DIY style. So I'm really grateful Susie could come on and kind of share some of her story, and it was cool to kind of have Craig offer some fun tidbits along the way. I think that Vegas story is definitely going to go down in history as an awesome one. So I love it. But so for all of you listening out there, this is the day. Telemarkskier.com. We have redone it. It is up. It is available. You can subscribe to the premium content, and we're going to be doing that, and I'm going to be talking a lot more about that here as we go along. But you can find not only, we're not starting from scratch, there's been content up there over the years. We're starting to add a lot of the old content from the old magazines too, so that'll be super cool. And we would love to have you be a part of it, whether you're doing a reoccurring monthly subscription or you can do an annual subscription. Either way, we would love for you to get on there and help us out, help us grow this back into what it needs to be. For those of you that aren't familiar, you can go, we've talked about relaunching the magazine online right now. And, we're not doing this via advertising. It's a bygone era. We want to be supported by the people that are interested in the topics that we're writing about. Obviously, Telemark skiing, the gear, the culture, the people, and the things that are going on, and how we can grow our own industry and how to make that better. Craig's going to be leading the charge on that in the editorial department and helping us, and I couldn't be more excited to have him. And hopefully after this podcast, you guys are as fired up as I am. There's an amazing history behind this. There's amazing people that have thought about this and started this in the first place. And, I'm hoping with my team that we can carry that on, and we hope that you will come and support us. So go to telemarkskier.com, check it out. We've got some really cool stuff coming up in the near future. We've got some new in-depth gear reviews, and also me and Craig are going to be doing Sips and Tips, which is going to be a live event that you can tune into, the subscribers can tune into and interact with us over a couple brews and or your beverage of choice. And ask us questions live and we'll answer them. So we'll be talking more about that and get you some more info. In the meantime, sign up for the mailing list. The link is in the notes, and we would love to do that. That comes out every week. It kind of aggregates all the content, what's happening. And this is year round. If you want to not pay attention to it during the summer, that's great. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere and you're getting stoked, even better. Or if you just want to see content throughout the spring, summer, and into the fall, we're going to be moving along with that. So we'd love to have you guys be a part of it as well. How you can support us, telemarkskier.com. Grab that monthly or yearly subscription, and we're going to keep firing away. You can shop at freeheellife.com. Like I said, we've still got some stuff available. We've got new stuff coming out. I know we've got some cool new t-shirts that are getting printed right now, so keep an eye out for those. Cinco 5-panel hats are live. And if you have any suggestions, you just want to say hi, you like something about the episode, hit me up at podcast@freeheellife.com. And thank you for all the love and support of all the stuff we're doing. I couldn't be happier. And I've got plenty of podcasts. So every Monday, tune back in. Make sure you subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts, drop a review. Let me know what you think. And I've got a bunch of amazing guests coming up in the coming months to get us through the summer heat. And I can't wait to share those with you. But until then, I'll see you guys next week. And spread Telemark always, my friends. Peace out.